Howdy, folks. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. It's snowing in Buffalo. Shocking.
It's snowing here, but like for nothing. Like, honestly, I have not had to shovel all year. I just brought the shovel out.
Yeah, no, it's funny because I was talking with some older gentlemen who I have coffee with in the morning. And, obviously they've been around longer than I have, but even going back to when I was a kid, and you remember the blizzard of 77, you remember big snowstorm.
It was in 96. I think there was a blizzard of 96.
There?
Yeah, because I just saw a thing about it.
Yeah, most of our big storms recently have been early, I'd say fall storms. We had the October storm that
I remember that one.
Yeah, we had one in November of 2000, and the reason I know that is because I was living down on the Buffalo waterfront, down near now where the canal side is. It was
right.
So I was right down there, and it was right before Thanksgiving, and I had an F-150 truck at that point, if you can believe it, and I couldn't get within 2 miles of my apartment and ended up walking the rest of the way. But was smart enough to get a pizza on the way because I had I had no food in my apartment, and the guys who were plowing the roads stopped and said, "Hey, we'll give you $20 for that pizza." And I'm like, "No, I got nothing in my apartment. This is all I have to eat the next 2 days, so it's for you." But the funny thing is, it's like we've had a couple, sort of dustings and maybe a few accumulate, but nothing of any kind of major consequence. And I mean, I guess if this is a sign of global warming or climate change in Buffalo, it's not that bad, but I know it's different in different places.
No, it's different. It'll hit different parts, different years. The best one I can give you is in 2009 when I wrote the book Ranger Greats. A year later, I did a signing with Don Mattingly and Brian Leach, and it was in the city, and it was at I forget the name of the comedy club, but at any rate, it was there, and they had about 100 of the books, and so they signed them. There was a little Q&A and all of that, and then pictures, and it started really snowing badly during the pictures. Oh, it was Gotham Comedy Club.
Okay,
pretty popular. And I was looking at things and looking at my watch and deciding how the hell I was going to get home because, I had to take the train and it's about an hour drive. I do all that and literally got home as someone had to dig out a spot in my driveway and my car just made it in at about 1 a.m. Like, that's how tight it was. And I'm carrying in like my book that Brian Leach signed and like a signed bat from Don Mattingly, running for my life to get in the house.
Yeah, a trip that would normally take me a half an hour took me 9 hours, and I didn't even get back to my apartment. I had to walk the rest of the way. So yeah, it's and it wasn't like I had some sort of four-wheel drive or some sort of a rear or front wheel drive like Ford Escort. I had a truck, and I still couldn't get anywhere. All right, let's start with the pre-show. Let me just mention this because it was Ranger connected. I don't know if this was what you were going to talk about, but Larry David was on the Michael Kay show yesterday, and it was pretty funny that he apparently he's he's a Yankees fan, but he also likes the Mets, which I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you can like one or the other.
Right, he's at Met games. He is.
Yeah. He's a big Ranger fan, and he was talking with Don LaGreca about Capo Caco being sort of benched by David Quinn, and it was pretty funny. There's like a 40-second video out there of him sort of criticizing Quinn for benching Caco. It was refreshing. I mean, I think Larry David's pretty funny. So him talking about hockey and it actually sounding knowledgeable about it wasn't like he was doing it on a sports show just for the effect.
No, I mean, look, cool. New Yorkers, the ones that like the Rangers are pretty passionate. So that doesn't shock me. Although apparently he said he told somebody to draft. Oh, I think the Jets.
He told Mike McCagnon to draft Lamar Jackson, and McCagnon supposedly just laughed at him.
Right. Well, he was right. McCagnon doesn't have a job anymore. So, and I like Lamar Jackson too. I wrote about him in pretty glowing terms, saying I felt like a lot of teams are going to be wrong. So, I understand why he feels that way to say that too, because a lot of people doubted him. Another thing was, so FAN had Gary Bettman on recently, and while there was some good talk about Las Vegas, there was some bad talk, like Joe Beningo basically saying that the NHL is a regional sport. If you're talking about Vegas, doesn't that tell you that it's not a regional sport? Like, it's like you can't do both. You can't go with this old, tired narrative that it's a regional sport, because it's not.
This is the thing I mentioned. And okay, WFAN is a failing station. Their ratings are going in the tank. Most of their people are either going to online, like Francesa or Bart Scott or Chris Carlin have gone over to the competition. The ratings are cratering, and I've listened to Beningo and Roberts for years, and if I had $1 for every time they've talked about the Rangers or talked about the NHL over the last 6 months, I couldn't buy a Big Mac. I mean, they just don't. So
I know when I used to cover the Rangers religiously, I saw Joe at games.
Yeah,
like, he used to go. I don't know if he goes anymore.
Yeah, I don't know either. And he's more into the Mets and the Yankees in baseball during the season. But anybody who talks about the pathetic Knicks over the Rangers, who at least have young talent who are on a more upward positive track. I mean, WFAN, it's a regional sport. I mean, the NHL was more international than the NBA going back to the 1970s. Just because the NBA gets more attention does not mean that that the NHL is regional.
Well, I mean, again, apparently Beningo called Tavares pajama boy. It's like you're interviewing a commissioner.
Yes.
Like, you're really going to talk like that? And then Evan apparently asked Gary to promise all Islanders home playoff games would be at the Coliseum. And it's like, again, a 12-year-old Islander fan knows the score on that. I was just at an Islander watch party. Everybody there knows the score with that. Mm-hmm. Why do you ask an embarrassing question like that? Now, apparently
– it's gotcha. That's what it is. It's gotcha.
It's just stupid. And Bettman's too smart for that. Now, I think he went to ESPN Radio too, and DiPietro interviewed him. And so somebody told me that, and this does sound like a DiPietro question because it's smart. He said, or if Bettman wasn't there, he was just talking about it. And he basically said that Bettman won't move the Coyotes to Canada, even though they bring in a lot more money because he wants the franchise to succeed down there. There is a lot of truth to that. That we've always talked about that. And the reason it's not only they wanted to succeed, it's also the television market.
There you go.
Again, that last Winter Classic maybe opened up more television market in the South. Yeah. And that's something that is big. Again, if you want to, pray and bow down to the NBA, the NHL's Winter Classic for a one-off game drew $35 million into local economy. Aside from the NBA going to China, which didn't work out very well this year, they don't have a game like that draws that puts something in the local economy that is a spectacle on a regular season basis. They don't have it.
Well, think of it this way. I mean, the only place I think it's logical that the Arizona Coyotes move, if they move, and now I doubt I'm having less thought that they're going to move because they have new ownership, they're spending money, and the team is good, so they'll probably draw people to the Gila River Arena. Is Houston. And the reason that the NHL would be on board with that is because Phoenix is the number 4 market in the U.S. population-wise, and Houston is number 5, I believe. It's like
the Southwest market, Houston is a great sports market for TV. So you're right. That would be logical. But right now, no, I think we all had issues with Arizona, but for the moment, it does seem like it's working out.
Yeah, and right now, I think, honestly, if you're talking about a team being moved in Canada or inside Canada, it could be Ottawa to Quebec City. It could be Florida if they continue to draw, 3,000 people on Tuesday nights. So anyway, okay, let's start the show. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Wednesday, January 8th, 2020.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
It's acceptable to say that when in the first week and a half of the next year,
once you hit like the 10th, Mike, it's no longer acceptable. I'm just letting you know.
It's the 8th, so I got it in that. And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. All right, let's start with some games from last night. But before we do that, Well, actually, we can do it. We can do the first two stories in concert with the games. The Carolina Hurricanes won 5-4 over the Philadelphia Flyers. We'll talk about the game in a second, but during the game, the cameras looked up into the press box, corporate box area, and caught Thomas Dundon wearing a Carolina Hurricanes hoodie, standing next to former Canes captain Justin Williams.
Yep.
Now, Williams, after the game, signed a 1-year deal, $700,000 minimum deal, prorated with bonuses. This is the thing, Russ, and there had been rumors over the last week or so that there was not 100% certainty that Williams was going to get the deal with the Canes because they're limited on the cap. The deal that he ended up getting, he got $700,000, as I said, which prorated for half the year will be $350,000. But he got $1.3 million in performance bonuses. We don't know if that's games played or goals or whatever. But the key to that is the money is deferred until next season.
Right.
They'll hit their cap next season. This is sort of like the Washington Nationals deferring Strasburg's money, and he took it, as opposed to Anthony Rendon, who said, "No, I want my money now." Williams was okay with and Williams is in Carolina. His family stayed there, but there was talk. Pierre LeBrun came out yesterday and said the Leafs had kicked tires on Williams, that the Bruins, that Tampa Bay had also been in on him. So this was not a fait accompli. It sounds like Williams had to put the threat out there of going someplace else to get Dundon to kick in the bonuses.
Yeah, because Dundon is incredibly cheap. Like, there's just no way of around that. I think that Williams would have been back sooner had he got a better offer sooner from him. He was always trying to go with Dundon, but Dundon must have not been budging, so he started looking elsewhere.
Right.
They have $2.5 million in cap space. Did they really have to do it this way? No. But this is Dundon sort of taking advantage of Williams, knowing that he's got him where he wants him. He wants to be on the team. He's in that market. And so, yes, this is Dundon getting a deal. But this is a bad precedent for other players to set with Tom Dundon, because he's going to think he could do this all the time. And these are extenuating circumstances where Williams has made a lot of money over his career, so he's sort of willing to deal with this. Okay, it is what it is. It definitely helps them, but their goaltending still wasn't great last night. So to say that they're going to go far with that goaltending, still something might have to change. And, for the Flyers' sake, it was an awful game. They had a 2-0 lead. They blew it. They did tie it up. They did tie it up with, 4 or 5 minutes to go in the game, something like that, 6 minutes to go. And that was good. So they got their point. Mm-hmm. People are trying to tell me online, this is an incredibly important point. And I'm like, I don't know. They went 1-4-1 on this trip. I don't know if this is an incredibly important point, because while you took that 1 point, you gave Carolina 2, and you're chasing Carolina. So there's really no happy way out of this unless you won it, and at least you would have gotten one more point than Carolina. You didn't. So that's not a success.
Funky is talking some smack in the chat. Says, I said on here back in September, Justin Williams was going back to Carolina or another team, and Russ said I was wrong. Looks like Russ was wrong again. First of all, I don't remember that.
I don't either, but I'll take you on your word for that. But the idea was, if it was such a slam dunk, why was he talking to other teams? And he literally just came back.
Sorry about that. Yeah, no, I
Is that a Hall & Oates song as your ringtone?
That was the Apocalypse in 9/8 from Supper's Ready.
Okay.
I used the little. If I'm using a, well, it shows how much a Genesis nerd I am. I'm using a. Anyway. So yeah. Well, the Carolina's goaltending is the major issue. I mean, maybe they wanted to preserve a little bit of flexibility in terms of the, in terms of the deadline, and that's why they were being so picky-unish about Williams, but at the end, maybe they knew that Williams really wanted to be there. Like I said, he kept his family. He stayed in Carolina. They knew that he wanted to play there, and maybe they didn't respect the threat of a team like Boston, Tampa, or Toronto signing him. Let's take the other side of the coin here, and then we'll get to the games. Look at those three teams that were interested and extrapolate from that what that says. We know Boston's looking for at least a top 9 and maybe a top 6 winger. They could have gotten that. There was talk about them being interested in Kovalchuk. They backed off from that and ended up being they passed on him for a minimum deal. They were interested in Williams. Williams would have fit the bill on that because he scored 53 points last year. Tampa Bay, they're going great guns right now, but of course they're tight against the cap. And they lost a lot of experience last year with JT Miller, with Girardi. Coburn was out of the lineup for a while. So Ryan Callahan. So adding a veteran like Justin Williams would have made sense. Toronto, same thing. Even though they're loaded up front, they lost Hainsey, they lost Marlowe, they lost Tyler Ennis. He
also good defensively. He would have helped them defensively.
Right. He's a responsible two-way forward. So, yeah, I mean, it made sense for all three of those teams. And what this says to me is if they were in on Justin Williams, not that there's a ton of Justin Williamses out there on the market as a free agent, but when it gets closer to February 24th, I think all three of those teams are going to be looking for either depth forward or defensive help. And them being in on Williams just says that they're being proactive to go out and get those type of players.
And just, again, to answer Funky, if it was such a slam dunk, he wouldn't have talked to any other teams. But there must have been a point in his mind and his agent's mind where they were like, all right, look, we have to cover ourselves here because you want to play. We have to do – we want to do this in Carolina, but there is a chance you may not play in Carolina. And clearly, if he's talking to other teams, he was at least looking at the possibility of not playing in Carolina. But he is. It helps him. On the Flyers front, look, we all know Chuck Fletcher has to do something. Defensively, Robert Hagg, not what he was last year, especially under this coach. So that's different. Phil Myers, I mean, you're rushing him in there hoping that because of the physical nature of his play and the great skating that you can get something out of him. He's bumpy. Right now, their defense is weakened. And Svechnikov, with his between-the-legs breakaway, was one thing, but there were 3 or 4 breakaways in that game, 2-on-1s. And again, the Flyers fans that wanted to give me a hard time that said they weren't slow on defense, they were. And it showed in that game. And they were fortunate to get that point. But the way this division is now in the Metro, I don't think the top 3 is changing. I think it's a matter of the Atlantic taking over everything. And if the Flyers want to stay in that wild card spot, they're going to have to keep Columbus and Florida at bay. And to do that, they have like 7 games in the next 2 weeks. This is all without Justin Braun. So this is where the GM has to do something because I think the season is now. I don't think it's after the trading deadline, to be honest.
Yeah, and we can talk about one team that's going in one direction and another that's going in another. You mentioned the Blue Jackets. They're tied now, with Philadelphia. Now they're, if the season ended today, I think
it's amazing if you think about it because everybody was talking about the Flyers like 3 weeks ago with the surge that they had. Oh, speaking of surge, did you see the Carolina surge after the game? They had a sumo match between the 2 goalies with Mrazek and Reimer. Did you catch that?
I caught a little of it.
It was fun. It was good.
I thought it was completely unrealistic because James Reimer was stopping a puck. Sorry.
All right.
But continue.
No. The only thing I was saying is it's amazing that Philly was as high as they were, and Columbus has now caught them. And it shows you in the midst of an NHL season, we know it's not how you start, it's how you finish, but also it does show how inconsistent the Flyers play is on the road and at home. And the one thing Torts has done a very good job with is getting his team rallied. Because, I mean, again, they needed to get rallied. And he's had a couple of really pivotal moments this year where he sort of, went back to being the old Torts. right now he's getting the results.
Well, I mean, he's some of the players, the players who remain on that team are stepping up. I mean, Pierre-Luc Dubois had 3 assists yesterday. Werenski had 2 goals, but they're also getting secondary offense out of guys like Robinson and Nathan Gerby, former Saint.
And Eric Robinson, I've talked about him before. I covered him in Princeton. He's a really good skater. He's like 6'2". He could play the penalty kill. He could do a little bit of everything. So I think it's really smart that Jarmo Kekalainen drafted him. And I always did like him when he played for Princeton. And I saw him play a lot over his 4 years there. So that's something where, those kinds of players could really give you a jump start. And let's also be fair about something. Seth Jones is a superstar. If he was in any other market, imagine if Seth Jones were in Toronto or Montreal, the kind of press he would get for the moves that he has. Once in a while we see a video. Once in a while you may watch a Columbus game, but this guy's just a tremendous athlete.
Yeah, and Elvis had 37 saves in the 4-3 victory over Anaheim. Now going
difference right now, he is.
Now going in the other direction is the Montreal Canadiens, and I say that with complete and utter glee. They lose 4-3 to the Detroit Red Wings yesterday. 3rd game they've lost to Detroit this year.
I mean, you can't have that.
That's absolute killer. I mean, you exactly. I mean, it's they're at 43 points right now, a game under, what is considered 500 now, 18, right. 18 and 7. But really, that means that they're 8 games under 500. Ilya Kovalchuk got 2 assists last night, but this is the problem. It's like that was, and I said to you earlier, Kovalchuk's got 3 assists in 2 games. For a $700,000 hole plug, that's pretty good. But the signing of Kovalchuk was a Band-Aid on a bullet hole.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. We said this early in the year. We said this when we were looking at who were playoff teams. And I know Ak was very pro Canadians. They needed – because everything went right last year. Remember, Tatar scored, and he was a salary dump. Max Domi had his career best year. Everything went right, and they missed the playoffs by a point or 2. So this year, injuries, Drouin, Armia, Byron, now Gallagher, who was, 30-goal scorer last year. They bring in Kovalchuk, and immediately he's on the number 1 line and the first power play.
Mm-hmm.
You're expecting Carey Price to be the Carey Price of 5 or 6 years ago. He's still a very good goaltender, but he's not perfect. And Shea Weber is 33, 34 years old, and you're playing him 24, 25 minutes a night. This is the problem. There's not enough there. And Anthony in the chat says Montreal has never fully tanked, and they should tank. It's not possible for that team to tank. The fans will burn that building down.
They will. I mean, Philip Zadina had the big goal yesterday. Nice to see that. Here's the thing about Kovalchuk. So he gets a few assists. He gets one of them on the second goal, which at the time put him up 2-0. But then where's Kovalchuk at the end of the game? You know what I mean? Like, where's he when you need him? I know that's my ringtone. Where is he at the end of the game when you need him? Right? I mean, that's the thing. Zadina scored his goal. Actually, Nielsen scored, tied the game at 11:19, and Zadina scored at 16:08. So where's Kovalchuk at the end to either get a goal or get another assist then? That's why you sign Ilya Kovalchuk. If I'm just getting assists from him, it's still not a great signing. It's okay because you're getting points, but this is a guy that you're expecting to be a goal scorer. Ilya Kovalchuk's a goal scorer. If you're getting him and he is just getting assists and he's maybe getting some of them on the power play, like it's not as much of a help as you would hope it would be.
Yes. All right. I tuned in a bit to the Rangers Avalanche game last night because Igor Shesterkin, the Russian goalie prospect who's been burning up the AHL, was called up a couple days ago, and made his first NHL start. I heard something about he was called up. He was in New York, and apparently he forgot his equipment or something like that. And he had to go back to Hartford to get it.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, I just heard like that in passing. Well, it made sense that it was Shesterkin because it was Hartford, and they were talking about the Rangers at the time.
Yeah, I didn't hear that.
But give me your. I mean, I was impressed. I know that the NBC SN broadcast was playing this off like he is some.
Like he's a kid. I don't know. Pre-game, we got a
24 years old. He's not a kid.
I know. And pre-game, we got a text like Milbury saying he was being thrown to the Wolves. He can't be thrown to the Wolves if he's a starter in the KHL for a couple of years and then a starter for half a season in the AHL. That's not exactly being thrown to the Wolves. And, fans were like online. They were like, well, you should put him in against the Devils, not against Carolina. And, Colorado. And my feeling was Colorado's coming off a back-to-back. Mm-hmm. This guy, the best thing to do is to get him in right away. If you put him on the bench and let him start thinking about when he's going to start having his NHL moment, you don't want to do that. So I think the Rangers did the right thing. They threw him in there, gave up a couple goals early. They weren't his fault. Matter of fact, Adam Fox's one giveaway to Nathan McKinnon was so bad, and McKinnon comes in 1-on-0 and just, and he puts a 5-hole. Like that's
welcome to the NHL, kid.
Yeah, that's Nathan McKinnon, man. His hands are like faster than they were 2 years ago. It's insane. But the Rangers did rebound. He did. Right after that sequence, he made another great save. He was making great saves down low. He was looking great post to post. But again, NBC missed an opportunity. They had Brian Boucher. And instead, on this game, they put Mike Milbury, and we have Pierre on there too.
Pierre was between the glass. Was it Patrick Sharp or was it Keith Jones? And besides Milbury,
Keith Jones.
Okay.
Maybe it was Keith Jones. I'm not sure. But at any rate, Mike Milbury is no longer in a position where he should be evaluating goalies because at one point he was like, he's not settled in. He doesn't look good. Well, and it's like, hold on. He ends up getting the win, which makes Milbury look ridiculous. And he really did not give up a bad goal where you say, oh, that's just awful on the kid.
If there's an expert about throwing a goalie to the Wolves, it's Mike Milbury. He did it with Luongo. He did it again with DiPietro. He's an expert. He should be on that panel.
And actually, at the very beginning of the game, Shesterkin made a move where he was behind the net and sent it down the ice to give a great headman pass to I forget who it was. Maybe it was Zibanejad, and they got a shot on goal because of it. Yeah, if you're throwing a guy to the Wolves, nobody's making that play. Carter Hart never tries that play, just to give you an example, and the difference in the kind of goalie he is. So he is a lot more grown up than you think. He played a really good game. The Rangers played a very solid game, and this was a good win. It does cause a bit of a problem now, and that is, are you going to go with him again next game? Are you going to sit him and put Lundqvist in? Is Georgiev now going to sit for a week or two? This is where I felt like, Jeff Gorton should have traded Georgiev already. I told you that. Yeah. And I think that's still the best course of action if he could do that. So he eliminates this problem because there's no doubt that Shesterkin is good. I don't think and he's wearing Dan Blackburn's number, which I like because I really liked Dan Blackburn. I covered him his entire rookie season. Yeah. I mean, again, that injury really killed him. He was a good goalie on a bad team. He really was. He knew what he was doing, but once he lost like one of his pectoral muscles and he started playing with like two blockers at the end, he looked like, it was kind of weird.
Bill Durnan used two gloves. Oh, no, actually, Bill Durnan used two gloves.
Yeah, he used two blockers when he was playing for like the Victoria Salmon Kings. That's how it got for Dan. But he was a great guy and a really good goalie until, that happened.
Well, a couple things here in the chat. One non-Ranger related. I just want to nip it in the bud. Funky was saying Bobby Mack is retiring? ? No,
he's not. He got re-signed.
He got re-signed to a 5-year contract. He's just. But what he said in a tweet yesterday, he's not going to be like on the panel 3 days a week, and I bet you he's going to do like maybe 1 day a week, do occasional radio.
Well, he has to do NBC, and he's flying to do that. He has to fly into Connecticut for that.
Right, and he flies out every like he was flying on Toronto radio this morning. He was at Pearson. He was flying to go. I don't think he's going to be doing that. So I think he's he'll have a lesser schedule. I know he's going to do the World Junior and the draft. So he's getting
a little older. I don't know which draft it was. but he was there at one of the drafts with crutches because he just had knee surgery.
Right. He's just taking a step back, but he's not.
I mean, this guy does his work, man.
He's not stepping away from the scene. Now the other thing was with the Rangers. I mean, we don't know about Kreider, but I think it's fair.
And he had a good game too, Kreider.
I think it's fair to assume that, with the Rangers sort of taking a step back here in the playoff race, that there is going to be either a concerted effort to sign him or to trade him. I'm leaning towards trade because now
I am too, but they're going to wait till the last minute, Mike. They were playing up the fact that the Rangers need these 2 points and yada, 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 and they're still in it. And right. I'm not totally buying that, but,
Now the question that's more pointed towards the goaltending situation is now Georgiev, because if Shesterkin is playing and he's playing as a, quasi 1B, to Lundqvist, where's Georgiev going to be? Is it going to be a rotation? I mean, you've got 3 goalies here and 2 that are quasi backups that are going to be either 1A, 1B types with the Rangers or with somebody else.
I mean, they could set Shesterkin down too if they don't trade Georgiev and say, hey, look, it'll be a couple weeks. We'll settle this and then you'll be back up. That is possible.
Yeah, but I don't think that this situation, if it lasts in terms of 3 goaltenders, is beneficial for the Rangers in terms of, determining or setting a market for these goalies.
Right.
Because do you really, you could say, well, it really doesn't matter that they carry 3 goaltenders, but you want to evaluate, and you can't really evaluate Shesterkin as a potential number 1 next year when he's playing once every 3 games and you have a three goalie rotation, because you can't sit Lundqvist a long time either.
No, and you wouldn't want to. So you're right, but we'll see what happens with it. It's going to be interesting.
I just don't know what the value you can garner for Georgiev right now. If it's a team that's desperate for,
give me a second-round pick in this draft, and we have a deal.
Yeah, but I don't think that's a thing. I don't know. Arizona, right now, Ranta and Kemper are out. Kemper is supposed to be back before the All-Star break, but they're not going to push him because they're in the playoff race. Ranta's injury was day-to-day, but there's been goaltending issues in terms of injury with that team for a long time. Do they go out and trade for Georgiev? Well, if both of those guys are healthy, then they're carrying 3 goalies, so that doesn't make any sense. It's a team that has a issue where, like San Jose, they maybe need a goalie who's a future goalie, but San Jose doesn't have draft picks.
Right,
they've traded too many picks. So, and I know somebody was saying in there Toronto, but Toronto traded their first-round pick. I don't think
it wouldn't require a first. If Toronto would give them a second, they might make the deal.
Right, but I don't think Toronto's going to give up a second in a strong draft like next year's. I don't think. But there are Buffalo could really use a number.
They're not going to give up on that plan right now, though.
Right, no, Luukkonen is going to be their goalie in a couple years.
No, but you know what I mean? They don't want to even say what they've been doing has been wrong.
Right. Well,
season.
Right. They're paying Carter Hutton as a backup to be one of the worst backups in the league. He's making almost $3 million, and he hasn't won in 10 consecutive starts.
It's really the most covered up story. If it's the best. That's the best word I can come up with in the NHL that doesn't get talked about. Think about that for a minute. Nobody even gets to get close to that in Toronto before they get cut as a backup goalie. And in most markets.
Yeah, it was attracting attention that Hutchinson was 0-5-1 and they only earned one of possible 12 points, and especially when the team was under 500. Now, Hutchinson's won 3 games in a row, although he technically took the loss on Monday, but giving up 3 goals, Freddie Anderson giving up 3 goals in
that game, whatever.
Yeah. But all right,
hang on. Well, in between here,
yep.
The Adidas came out with the All-Star jerseys, so I want to show it off a bit. I like it. I actually there we go. That's a good look at it. So the white, I believe, is what the East will be wearing. Okay. And then the other color was that the gray. Is it gray?
It looks grayish with
white. Metal.
Yeah.
Is what the West will be wearing. I like it. I like the stripes across it. I like the way it looks. They're light, and obviously They're the kind of jerseys that don't soak up sweat. So I think they have a decent look to them. I know we have looked at all-star jerseys in the past, and sometimes they're hit and miss. I would say every once in a while I like them, but I would say for this year's version, I like it. I like the West version best because I like that color gray. I mean, it's just like the gray you usually wear, but now you're going out of your way to buy different colors.
Well, the question is, are they going to, like, for individual players, are they going to have the Oilers emblem on McDavid with the black jersey?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure they will. This is just a way of.
So they're not going to have a Wales and Campbell or a West or a divisional emblem. It's going to be the.
No, I think they'll just have a team patch like on the shoulder.
Okay, and that's, you know what, that's smart in terms of marketing for fans who don't particularly want an all-star jersey. They want the jersey of the player from their team, and it has their team's emblem on it. So that I think that will help sales. I just, and I'll go off on my normal usual all-star rant. You can tell that the feeling that I have regarding the all-star game is spreading. And there's other members of the media. I know Pierre LeBrun has been very upfront about his disdain for the all-star game because it's a meaningless game of shinny. But it's not being done for reporters or fans like us who are lifers. It's being done for, I guess, the casual fans to see those players on the same ice at the same time.
Looks like they're going to have the logos like that. So
okay,
just like the Blues logo, they'll have everybody else's logo.
But my point is like now, Alex Ovechkin has dropped out for the second year in a row. Marc-Andre Fleury has said he's not going to go. And I believe Kemper is injured. That's different. He'll be replaced because of an injury replacement. But some players want the rest more than they want to go to St. Louis for the All-Star game. And that's what I'm saying. It's like if it's an event for the league, for their advertisers, fine. But I just think it's a waste of time. But I'm in the minority on that one, I guess.
Oh yeah, and actually, it's not the West and the East because they.
Right, it's the Atlantic and Central and
because here's like the Winnipeg one looks kind of nice in white there if you could see it.
Yeah, barely.
Right next to that,
it's like a blizzard in Winnipeg.
Yeah, but I kind of like it. Like the one that shows up a little more is the Avalanche one. You see that in the corner. So yeah, interesting. But I still like the game. I'm not going this year, but I will go back to the All-Star game. I always find it fun. They always have to change it up. I agree. And there may be a year that they don't have the All-Star game because, they were talking about that with the possible World Cup, right? So,
yeah. Okay, the Bruins beat the Nashville Predators 6-2 last night in Nashville. It was game one of the John Hines era in Nashville. There was the highlight that I saw frequently was the fight between Zdeno Chara and Trennan, the young forward.
Yeah, Trennan, yeah.
Yeah, for Nashville. And surprisingly, it wasn't a technical knockout for Chara. Trennan got a good couple punches in and made the thing is, it's like, I don't know how good of an idea it is, and you were talking about this before, Russ. I don't know how good of an idea it is that Chara had surgery, and I believe the surgery that he was out for a few weeks for was for his jaw.
Yeah.
And he gets rocked on the jaw by this Nashville forward. I mean, not a good idea. I mean, he's capable of doing it. He's sticking up for his teammates. But maybe not a great idea to trade punches when you've just had a broken jaw.
It's not. But I'll tell you, Trennan's a big kid with a lot of skill. He is. He's 6'2", he's over 200 pounds. He's got 4 points in 9 games. He's a +2, and now he's fighting for you too. So those are the kinds of players that could really help Nashville. But my big question about Nashville is you inserted John Hines. We're still not seeing the bump. So how long is it going to take now until we see the bump from this team? They still may have to shake up that locker room, Mike. That's the bizarre part of this.
Now, Chris Johnson from Sportsnet just posted the performance bonuses for Justin Williams. So here you go. I'll just read this briefly. $150,000 for 10 games, $100,000 more for 20 games. So Unless he gets injured, those are very easily met bonuses. $250,000 if the team qualifies for the playoffs. So that's $500,000 in bonuses right there that seem pretty easy. $100,000 for each round the team wins in the playoffs. So rounds 1 through 3. Another $250,000 if they win the Stanley Cup, and another $250,000 if he wins the Conn Smythe. So of the let's see here, 600. 900, yeah, that's 1.44 million in potential bonuses. Of those 1.4 million, I think probably 800,000 are easily attainable.
I think so. But again, Williams is worth more than that, and he won't get this deal out of Williams next year. Williams probably retire anyhow.
Right.
But I don't know. Is it really worth it to have a nickel and dime kind of deal here with a guy that you're hoping propels you to the Stanley Cup? That's the big question here.
Yeah. Now, I didn't see a lot of –
what's the answer for you?
Well, I think, okay, in terms of Carolina, him being added to Carolina, I think he's a good add. He's a leader. He had a great year last year. I only think that Williams takes this deal if this is it. That he's going back to a situation where he's going to be a leader again. He's buddies with Brind'Amour, and I don't think he would have taken this kind of sweetheart deal if it was Tampa Bay or Toronto or Boston. I think it would probably be more money. It would have been more guaranteed money.
Right.
So they gave him a little bit of a sweetheart deal, but I think it speaks a lot of the Carolina Hurricanes that you're playing nickel and dime bull crap with the guy who led you to the conference final last year. So
yeah, that's the way I feel about it.
Yeah. Now, I didn't watch a lot of the Boston-Nashville game, but Nashville's really struggled, and obviously they fired Laviolette earlier in the week and replaced him with Hines. Paul Maurice, who's the current Winnipeg Jets head coach, was asked in Toronto today, because the Jets are playing the Leafs, about the season in which Babcock, Peter DeBoer, and now Laviolette have all lost their jobs. He says, "I'm concerned about the trend. They're coming. They're coming for you one day," meaning the general managers, all of us, no matter what, you're going to get fired. All three of those guys are coming back. I'm not 100% sure about all three of them. I'm still a little questioning about Babcock because of everything that came out after the fact. I think DeBoer will get a job. I think Laviolette will get a job if he wants it. But do you think all three of them are coming back?
Maybe.
Okay.
I'm going with a maybe. I mean, it's tough. I'm still stuck on the fact that Nashville gave up 3 goals in the third here in this game.
Yeah.
I mean, that is more of the same as what they were doing before.
Well, I mean
what's it really going to take to snap them out of it?
Well, it's going to take a little time for Hines to get his message across, and the problem is, will it be too late by that?
Yeah, they don't have a lot of time.
Yeah, and that's why they made the move now.
Yeah.
And, should we mention the little inside information that came out about Hines being the ex-roommate of the assistant general manager of the Predators, and that was the connection? I mean, we know that Hines had a connection to USA Hockey through Ray Shero,
right,
former assistant GM in Nashville, and then GM in Pittsburgh, and now GM in New Jersey. So I'm sure David Poyle probably contacted Shero about Hines, but it just seems that, I mean, look at really, you've got a whole slew now of ex-coaches who've been fired this year. Montgomery, obviously with his problems. Bill Peters, I'm not sure he'll ever get a job again based on what came out. But it maybe a year or two, and there'll be some reconsideration. But the three that were just mentioned by Maurice, Babcock, DeBoer, and now Laviolette, next summer when there are openings, these are going to be the three names that are mentioned over and over and over again. And guys like Lane Lambert, or other, Rocky Thompson, other like AHL coaches. I mean, that's the hurdle that they have to jump, is that all these retreads get jobs before they do.
Yeah, I mean, Who was the hot name like 3-4 years ago? Was it
Eakins?
Well, before him, Haviland, right? He was the assistant.
Yeah, I don't remember him as the big one, but
he was getting mentioned.
Yeah, and Keefe over the last couple of years because the Marlies were having such.
It takes so long for these guys to get jobs. It's just, I don't want to say this is a bad hire because we'll see how it goes, but I know Josh Harris is happy because he doesn't have to pay him anymore. You know, that's the one thing about when you fire a coach and somebody else picks him up, you get to stop paying that guy. So at least he's not paying two coaches. But end of the day, it might take him a week to get these guys playing the way he wants them to. And I don't know if they can hemorrhage those points in a week and still come back.
We'll answer this question while we mention the we'll answer the question here. Michael asked, will Florida trade Mike Hoffman or Dadonov? I would say no because they're in the playoff race.
Yeah, I mean, there's zero chance they're trading Dadonov. Now, Hoffman, if something comes up where they feel like, hey, we could get a defenseman for him and that's going to help us go further, they might part with Hoffman because Dadonov, even if I'm not sure what his contract status is.
I'm looking it up right now. Dadonov is, I believe, he's a UFA at the end of this year making $4 million. Hoffman is a UFA making 5.1.
Yeah, they're not going to pay Hoffman anyhow. So,
but I think you're right in the sense that they could trade Hoffman, but I don't think you're going to be able to trade him 1-for-1 for a defenseman. It might be like the whole situation that happened between Calgary and Montreal. Right? They trade Hoffman as a rental to a team that needs a scorer, and then use the empty cap space. This cap space that they cleared to get a forward and maybe trade the same draft picks.
Yeah, I mean, something like that could happen, but I think there's a better chance Florida re-signs Dadonov in the offseason, so rolls with him. I think Hoffman, there's a chance.
Now, you look at the standings right now and how things have changed fairly dramatically. Now, the Tampa Bay won 9-2 yesterday over the Vancouver Canucks with Carter Verhaeghe, who led the AHL in scoring last year. Former Leaf draft pick Carter Verhaeghe. Now, this is the standings right now in the East. Boston at 61 with 44 games played. Tampa at 54 with 42 games played. The Leafs at 53 with 44 games played. And then it drops from after the two wildcard teams to Florida, and I'm talking about the Atlantic here first. Florida at 49, Buffalo at 45, and Montreal at 43. Right now, it's looking like, unless Boston continues to Boston's had a bad last. It
was a bad stretch. I don't think they'll continue.
Well, but they're still getting points. They're 4-1-5 in their last 10. So at least they're getting loser points. That's keeping them at a safe distance. But Tampa Bay is rallying right now. They're finally playing the way people thought that they were going to play. But at the beginning of the season, everybody was saying Boston, Tampa, Toronto. Buffalo had that early run. Montreal was doing great early on. And now after half a season, it's Boston, Tampa Bay, and Toronto, with Florida in the wild card mix and Buffalo and Montreal trailing behind. It finds its way to getting to where we thought it was going to get.
Well, for the most part, I'm sure Funky had it all figured out, but this is what we thought. And yeah, look, the way the NHL is with the loser points, teams are always in it. So team like Montreal, like Buffalo, they win 5, they lose 5, they still get points. They're still going to be in it. We're going to be having the same conversation in a month. Hey, Buffalo's 5 points out and Montreal's 6 points out and the Rangers are 7 points out. You know what I mean? A lot of these teams are still going to be treading water. But I think the main teams that we're talking about, barring major injury, are the Flyers, Florida, Columbus.
Yeah, and Florida lost 5 yesterday to Arizona with Aiden Hill in goal.
I know. Florida was giving up odd man rushes too in that game. I saw some highlights.
And I'm not taking anything away from Aiden Hill. He made 37 saves, so he earned the victory. But I'm just saying that's a game where you see the third string goaltender in for a team that normally plays really good shutdown defense. You had an opportunity to earn points there, and in a tight race. I mean, I think it's realistic. I mean, we know that Boston or Tampa or Toronto are going to have a losing streak, and maybe they fall back to the pack or things get closer. That's very, very possible. But what I'm saying is that the teams with the higher level of talent have separated themselves, but it took them 40 games to do so. So,
well, let me ask you this: Florida's a +7 differential. Should it be higher at this point of the year, or is that the Quenneville effect, and he can only do what he has with the guys that he has right now?
Well, honestly, I think it's a bit of the Quenneville effect because, I mean, I saw them play last week, and I've not seen many instances where a Joel Quenneville team was sort of like comatose.
Right.
And they were down 3-0 to the Sabres and pulled Bobrovsky and didn't really get back into the game until mid to late third period and then almost tied the game. That's not quite, usually Quenneville's teams are not mailing it in, and that game had a mail it in feeling.
Okay.
Now it's tough to get your message.
What was the backup again?
Chris Dredger was the
Dredger.
Yeah, because
they may need to look to bolster their backup too. I mean, you can play Bob all these games down the stretch, and that's fine. But Dredger's not exactly the greatest backup.
No, but the thing is, you're expecting to get more out of Bobrovsky based on what you paid him, and I think his save percentage was like .906. It's not.
That's like average.
Now, is that a symptom of the team's defense?
Probably.
I think that's a little bit of it, but he did not really impress that much against the Sabres.
Yeah, so I mean, he needs to step it up too. Bob does have the ability to get hot. We'll see what happens. What was the comment that you shook down that said Philly too? What was that?
No. I just did that because the earlier comment was way up the line.
Oh, okay.
Get it off the screen. I just clicked on something quick. Let's see here. So we talked about the Lightning. We talked about the Panthers and Coyotes. The Islanders beat the Devils 4-3 in overtime. And okay, I know this will, make somebody's heart stop. I'll give credit to the Islanders in one respect, is that I still believe that they're a flawed team who can't score enough goals, and they have to really address that before the deadline. Lou needs to address that. Otherwise, I think they're maybe a one-round team, and then they get eliminated by a Washington or somebody like that. But they won 1-0 over the Avalanche, a team that's got a great offense. They played shutdown hockey. They beat the Devils 4-3 in overtime. They're winning the games they need to win, but if you look at where they are in the standings right now and compared to where they were maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, I mean, they're at 57 points, tied with Pittsburgh. Carolina and Philly and Columbus are 5 and 7 points behind them. So they're not safe, and neither is Pittsburgh with all their losses. So, they created a little bit of space with these 2 wins, but they're still in really, I think, and not in desperate straits, but they're still in a position where they're not locked down in terms of making the playoffs.
No, they're not locked down. They need to maybe make 2 moves. I don't know if Lou will do 2, so they may have to settle for 1, but they could use a defenseman and they could use a forward. So we'll see what ends up happening. Maybe something will happen within. I think it's too much to say Noah Dobson could be that defenseman. I really do. I think that's a bridge too far.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens with that.
The Capitals beat the Senators 6-1. Caps GM Brian McClellan was on Hockey Central this.
We didn't talk about the trade. We should.
Which, the McCarron deal?
Yeah, the McCarron for Dauphin.
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, end of the day, the Habs got a guy who could skate really well. So with Dauphin, why not give him some ice time and see if he could produce something? McCarron can't skate, and he's just a big body. So end of the day, you already know what he can't do. So at least this is a cost-cutting measure, but what if all of a sudden Dauphin does kick in a little bit?
Yeah, I just thought the contrast of the player who does skate well for the player who doesn't skate well was pretty funny in this deal. I mean, McCarron, it's funny because I've always compared McCarron side by side with Freddie Gauthier because I think they were in the same draft, same first round. Both big lugging guys. At least Freddie Gauthier has improved from slow to slow. He's a much better skater. Barb Underhill worked with him over the last few years, and I think he's at least an NHL average skater now. McCarron didn't. No. And McCarron is still as slow as he was, and this is why he's he's not even an NHL player. He's an American Hockey League player. So,
right.
Now Brian McClellan, the Capitals GM, was on Hockey Central this morning and indicated, he's happy with his top six. Obviously, he's happy with his goaltending tandem. Sounded like basically the Capitals might be looking for depth moves, 13th forward, 7th defenseman by the deadline. And I mean, that's not surprising because this team is leading the Metro Division. They're having a good year. I mean, why do you really need to, unless an injury comes along, why would you really need to mess with anything?
And which player? Sorry, I was looking for
Brian McClellan, the Capitals.
About the Capitals. Yeah, I did see the interview. They're not going to do much. They may not do anything at all.
Well, they don't have the cap space to do much.
Well, I mean, but they could trade somebody for somebody. But most likely they're not going to do anything at all. But the way he answered the Holtby Backstrom thing was, my feeling was they're signing Backstrom, they're not signing Holtby. That's what I always felt. That's the way I still feel. But he's going to deal with that in the offseason. He knows he has a cup run in this team. He's going to let it ride out. And then he knows what the plan is. He just doesn't want to tell you today. But the plan is Holtby's going to be gone. He's an own rental right now. Samsonov will be the goalie. That saves them a lot of money. That money goes to Backstrom. I think that's the way it goes.
Yeah, and it's a simple equation. You can replace Holtby.
Yeah.
You can bring in a veteran goaltender, maybe to make, say, $3.5 million as a backup and as a 1B, and not put all the weight on Samsonov while he's on his entry level contract.
Right.
You can't find a second line or first line center wherever you're going to put in Backstrom. You can't find that in free agency.
Not with that kind of playoff experience too.
Right. He's I mean, they may sign him to a deal that's like Oshie's in the sense that it's an 8-year deal. They spread out the cap hit. They front loaded.
He wins face-offs. Like, he's very valuable.
Right, but I mean, it could be like a $7 million cap hit, but like more than half of the contract in terms of money is loaded in the first 4 or 5 years. So, I think that I think Holtby is going to be on the market, and he'll get a lot of interest because there's a lot of teams that need goaltenders out there.
It looks like Lindgren's going to have a hearing today for the shot to Donskoy's head. That's a call. He ran him over. Kadri tried to stick up for Donskoy. That's fine.
He did a pretty good job too. He bloodied Lindgren with with a few left and right hands.
Yeah, and I don't think it was a cheap shot. People asked me if they thought that Kadri cheap shotted him. I don't think so. I think what he did was fine. Looks like Giovanni Smith got his first NHL point. That's nice. That's the one positive for Detroit is when you can get guys like that in there and give them experience because you're not going to win anything.
Flamester's asking, I think he's asking me if the Leafs are going to go after a goalie, and also the Flames in regards to JG Pageau. Well, I mean, with the Frolik deal, the Flames opened up the cap space to be able to make an acquisition. It's a question now whether they will give Ottawa what Ottawa is looking for Pageau. I don't know if they would want a first round pick. I would think that they would probably want a prospect that is ready to come into the NHL. Would they give Sam Bennett for Pageau?
Would they give Sam Bennett for Pageau? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I mean, if you're Ottawa, would you do that?
I might, because I might not get anything better, and Bennett still can score me 15 goals.
Right. It's a question of what Ottawa thinks the upside on Bennett is. If they think Bennett is better than what he has been right now with the Flames, then they might do that ideally, Ottawa is looking probably for first round pick and prospect.
By the way, more bad news for the Penguins. With all the revolving around for the All-Star game, Tristan Jarry is now an All-Star. That probably helps his negotiations next go-round.
Yeah.
All-Star too.
Yeah, I have a feeling it's his first All-Star game, so I understand him wanting to go. But I think if the Leafs, if you could get into the mind of Kyle Dubas and the Leafs, they would have loved Freddie Anderson to not be selected or to say that he didn't want to go. But he wants to go because it's his first All-Star game. His workload has been extremely heavy, so I think ideally they wouldn't have wanted him to go. Thomas Boyle asking in the chat here, Barzal is asking for Mitch Marner money or higher. Do you see Lou agreeing to his demands?
5 years, 10.5. I think that's what he's going to get. I don't think he's going to want more than 5 because I think it's going to be the same as Matthews, and he probably wants to see what's going to shake out on the island. But I think 5 years between 10 and 10.5.
Marner got 6 at 10.8 or 10.9.
And Marner's better.
And Barzal. Now I'm not watching a ton of Islanders games, but from what I saw when they played the Leafs last week, Barzal was playing center, but he has played wing too.
Yeah, and he's defensively responsible. I mean, he is the best player on that team. You do need to hold him. I don't think you can get him for 9. I don't.
No, I don't think so. You might be able to get him 9 on a 3-year deal, and then you have a year of arbitration eligible restricted free agency. But I think they'd want to get him long term, and they've got the cap space.
Right.
So why not
have to lock him up this summer?
Yeah, you have to have a star player to put in that new building if it ever gets built. I mean, they have broken ground on it.
They're just waiting on a check from the Wilpons. That's all.
Oh God.
In the mail.
Yeah. It's the money they're getting from Cespedes. Anyway, Hunter, what would Jakob Silfverberg's trade value be right now or at the deadline? Could see several teams be interested. Thoughts? I
think you could get like a 2nd-round pick in next year's draft or a B-type prospect. I think that's possible depending on the team and if they are loaded with prospects. I think you could pry away a B. Well, this is the thing. He, in a different situation, he could be a lot better than he is.
There is cost certainty here because he signed a 5-year deal last summer. He's making 5.25, which compared to some others out there is fairly reasonable. Right now, he's got 28 points in 42 games, so he's on a 56-point pace. He's 2nd in scoring behind Getzlaf. So he's
much on that team, though.
Yeah, him on a 30-goal pace with Anaheim, with a team that's rather challenged,
means that he could do better elsewhere.
Right. But I don't know if you see, this is the problem. We know, and Russ, we're going to talk about this before we end the show, your draft list.
Yeah.
This is a really good draft. And teams are probably loath to give up their 1st-round picks in this draft.
You might be able to get a conditional first for next year. Might.
2021, we don't know how good it's going to be.
Don't start asking me because I'm not looking at it.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's like that's the unknown. The league. Yeah. So, I don't think if San Jose knew how good the 2020 draft was going to be, would they have traded? Would they have made it unconditional in the Carlson deal, or they've given themselves some flexibility?
I would settle for a B prospect, and if they want to throw me a pick, that'd be great. And I think you might be able to squeeze it out of them at the deadline because, again, this is a significant amount of salary that a team's taking.
Okay, some quick hitters here. Russ, do you think Zadina will ever live up to his hype, and do you think Detroit wish they'd picked Quinn Hughes?
Well, I always think Detroit will wish they'd picked Quinn Hughes. I like Sider, though. I do. But as far as Zadina, he's got 5 goals. I think he is starting to live up to it. I think again, if we want to talk about Elias Anderson and the interview he did with Ufi Bowden, and, I couldn't believe some of the comments from Ranger fans, just how crass they were. And, right now there's an ongoing something going on. How open did you think Elias Anderson could be in giving answers? He told you as much as he could. But the issue is a cultural issue that's clear. And so he may never play for the Rangers again. Whether they can get something for him or not remains to be seen because he's got a year and a half left. That's where that lies.
The comments, and basically it's like, I got a year and a half for this contract to be over with so I can go someplace else. That's right. The way it sounded like. I know he said he had an injury. It wasn't specified what the injury was, but there was something else that he was referring to that he couldn't go into. And I don't know. I'm not going to go down that road to ask what that was, but clearly it just didn't work out, and he didn't like the treatment he was getting from the Rangers. So
he was rushed. Yeah. Zadina wasn't. They put Zadina up there. They saw he wasn't ready. They gave him a lot of games in Grand Rapids. And now you see a more responsible, stronger player. He's stronger than he was. Physically stronger, more mentally stronger. And so I think you'll see him getting between 20 and 30 goals next year. So I think right now this is a good learning year for him.
Yeah. Terry, if the Canadians decide to rebuild, whom does Price, Weber, and anyone else of value on the roster go to? Would Price be a fit with the Leafs? Terry, the Leafs have three players making over 11 million or close to 11 million or over 11 million. Yeah. And Price is 10.5. Unless the Canadians are retaining $4 million, making him a $6.5 million goaltender, the Leafs aren't interested because they can't afford him.
Right.
Freddie Anderson has another year after this year. At this point, I'm thinking the Leafs are going to probably talk to him next summer about extension.
Yeah, I think so.
Especially after coming off an all-star year. And
there's a gap between the younger good goalies they have and when they're going to be ready.
Right. They have two prospect goaltenders. One is, struggling in his rookie season in the AHL and Joseph Wall, but I still think he's going to be a good goaltender. The other one, Ian Scott, had hip surgery and is out for the year. So at the absolute least, the Leafs need a goaltender, number one, for 2 to 3 seasons before these guys are even ready to challenge for the job. So I think the Leafs are going to be looking next year because Anderson will still be under contract. They're going to be probably looking for a backup. Probably, there's been a lot of talk about going to the KHL for a backup goaltender. There was a Russian goalie who's having a great year that there was a piece on Sportsnet about. So I think they're going to go that way, but
I do too.
We'll see. But just before we end the show, Russ,
quickly.
Go ahead.
On the top 31, I put it out yesterday. I like to put it out at least after the World Juniors, sometimes after like the top prospects game, but I'm not going to the top prospects game. I'm going to be at the All-American prospects game because they changed their format. Now they're going to play against the NTDP. So that really is could be a heck of a game. So in that regard, I'm switching it up. So I put out the list now. Probably some surprises would be towards the bottom of the list. I have Ryder Ralston, 31st. That's Brian's kid. He is really fast. I think there's a chance he could be a finisher. I think we're not seeing nearly what we could see other than the speed right now. I think it's a work in progress. There's a fair amount of USHL guys in there. I did put in Blake Biondi is the one high school kid. Right now he's playing for Hermantown High School. Have I seen him in person? No, I have not. But I projected with other high school kids before, like Riley Tufte, and you get a certain amount of video, you look at their numbers. I have a system with what I use there, and I'm very careful with it because high school hockey clearly is so much different than junior hockey. But he's already playing in the USHL on the weekends, and is starting to get points there. So, Patrick Kane did that. A lot of guys that are really good have done that, and he could play center. He seems to be a natural center. So I put him in the list. This is the first list, though. So and I wrote it, it's going to change. It always is changing based on right through the end of the year, how people play and how the tournaments go. So, yeah, keep an eye on it. Go to Sportsology. I always have fun with it. I think maybe the biggest surprise on there is Christian Tanis. He was passed over in the draft, but, Mike, we all saw him in the World Juniors, and he was really good. He was one of Finland's best players. So right now I think because he played against some of those age-appropriate guys that he deserves to be there.
Sounds good. We'll be tracking those players as we go closer to the draft in June. Russ and I are both going to Montreal for that. Need some recommendations for some restaurants, not strip joints, restaurants in Montreal.
Right.
So send them along in the chat, maybe in the future. But that's it for the show today. Thanks for watching. For Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Remember, without the buzz,